Great. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I know people are joining us from all over the world today for this meeting, so thank you all for coming. And welcome to the first Global FOREWARN meeting of 2023 now, which will be focused on landslides. And it's really great to see so many people joining, and I can see people are still coming through as we started. So please do go ahead and pop your name and your organisation and the country you're joining us from into that chat box there and say hello to everyone. And as we go, please do feel free to post any questions, any comments that you might have as we go along. So just before we get started, a quick note on interpretation. For those of us who are listening and would like to listen in French, please do find the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. We don't have any presentations in French today, but feel free to join the English channel in case we have questions or comments in French as well. And for those speaking, just a reminder to myself as well to please speak slightly slower than normal, just to make sure that the interpreters are able to keep up with what we're saying. So moving swiftly on to the agenda, it's quite busy today, so we will have the usual welcome and updates from the team. And then the first sort of item on the agenda will be around 2 tools that were developed to anticipate landslides in Nepal. And both of these can be used to support alerts to the START fund. We'll then move on to a more research-focused section, and we'll hear from groups including the LandAware network, the SHARE-funded LandSLIP project, and we'll also hear about some research from the University of the Philippines, Los Banos. And then finally, the final item on the agenda is to hear about some work that has been done recently in Bangladesh to involve the community in landslide early warning systems. And at the end, we will hopefully have some time for open discussion, for questions, and for some conversation. So onto the next slide. Those of you who've joined us before, you'll be quite familiar with this slide, so I won't go through it in too much detail. But as you know, FOREWARN is the forecast-based warning analysis and response network. And this network of experts is just one strand of the anticipation service offer that is available to START network members who are hoping to act earlier. As we know, acting before a crisis happens can be uncertain and difficult, and often requires the expertise and advice of actors who don't traditionally work with humanitarians. So this network is hoping to bring together the right people to forecast hazards and to support humanitarians who are closest to an anticipated crisis. As some of you may know, we now have national networks in Bangladesh, Philippines, Madagascar, Pakistan, and Nepal. And we also have hazard-specific thematic global subgroups, which have a technical advisory role to the 2 START network financing mechanisms, START Fund and START Ready. On to the next slide, I'm happy to say that we are relaunching these thematic global advisory groups as soon as this meeting ends. And they will be relaunched and refreshed for each hazard throughout the course of the year. And we are starting with flooding and landslides. So, as I say, we'll be going through different hazards through the year. So please do register your interest, even if landslides and flooding aren't necessarily your areas of expertise, although I'm hoping most people here today have an interest in landslides. And we will reach out to you later in the year as we go through refreshing the different groups. So if you are interested in joining these groups, please go to the links in the chat. There is some more information there, as well as a link to the application form. And of course, you can always email forewarn@startprograms.org if you would like some more information or a chat. So moving on then to the National FOREWARN team updates. The team who are all here on the slide are also all present today and able to respond to your questions and comments in the chat. But rather than me giving updates on their behalf, we have some videos recorded from them to update you on their work so far. So Mark, over to you, please. Thanks.
Hello everyone, I'm Anthony, the FOREWARN officer in Madagascar. We were hit by Jenezo tropical storm this last January. We launched Start Ready this season to anticipate cyclones at 3 days before landfall, but the threshold has not been met. However, members were able to use the National Reserve from some early actions. We also get a good feedback from the Meteo department about the tool we developed together to improve and automatize cyclone forecasting. That tool is being used for the first time this year and has a result in terms of saving valuable time. Because the windows of opportunity before landfall for anticipatory action is short. Thank you.
Great, thank you to our colleagues in Madagascar for that update. And just to mention as well, it was a bit too late to include in the video, but Start Ready did in fact release 700,000 GBP this weekend for Cyclone Freddy, which I believe made landfall overnight.
Hello everyone, I'm Anthony, the FOREWARN officer in...
Mark, over to the Bangladesh video, please. Thanks.
Hi everyone, welcome to our Global FOREWARN meeting.
Hi, this is Javed Miander.
And this is Ashraf from FOREWARN Bangladesh.
Now it's time to give you update about our Bangladesh.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, why not we do it in a different way? Javed, what you are passionate about?
You know I am a technical person, so I have a passion to build a model with higher accuracy and which will be so easy to understand.
That's great, and that's what we are doing exactly in Bangladesh this year and the previous years. So this year we are very much focused on developing the cyclone and the flood model for our DRF systems, where we will be supporting 8 districts along the Jamuna Basin and coastal areas. And then, as you mentioned rightly, to have better accuracy of the model output, we are trying to develop the risk analytics in such a way and bringing the community in the risk analytics so that the model can give us better output and better accuracy. Yeah, and nonetheless, we are bringing the communities into the early warning message designing phase so that we can build very robust but simple message so that we can act ahead of any disaster following our contingency plan in Bangladesh. That's it.
I think you forgot something.
Really? What's that?
It's about our hackathon.
Oh, don't forget about hackathon in Bangladesh. We'll be arranging that with OpenStreetMap this year, in the middle of this year, and be connected with us. We'll let you know how we can be connected. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you to Ashraf and Javed in Bangladesh for that update there. And as I say, Ashraf and Javed are both on the call today if you have any questions about any of those updates. Mark, I think next it's for the Philippines update. Over to you.
For this Global FOREWARN meeting, we'd like to update on the activities and accomplishments of FOREWARN in the Philippines.
So the FOREWARN Philippines expert group has now grown to 15 members, with 7 of them actively engaged in risk monitoring. The group was officially launched at a 2-day scientific colloquium focused on anticipating geological and hydrometeorological hazards. FOREWARN experts also contributed specialist insight to the anticipation of disease outbreak Start Fund Alert 572.
And also, at the start of this year, FOREWARN actively supported the successful activation of an alert for LPA and shearline-induced flooding. Almost half of all active START network members in the Philippines were involved in raising the alert. And lastly, we will be conducting an AA stock taking. As a co-lead of the Evidence and Learning TSG, we are leading this study together with some of our FOREWARN experts to take stock of the experiences and evidences that is related to anticipatory action here in the Philippines.
So that's all for National FOREWARN in the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you to Anna and Leah for that update. And then last but not least, I think we have the Nepal update.
Namaste. We are pleased to announce the beginning of new chapter of Start for Nepal. That is
FOREWARN
FOREWARN
Nepal.
Nepal.
Currently, we are collecting interest in joining FOREWARN and assessing the technical capacities of our 32 NGO and INGO members, and encouraging experts from non-members to join FOREWARN group as well. This will help us plan our 2023 to support our member organizations through technical capacity building exercises and link with international technical partners such as Map Action and the START Network Global Technical Pool. We're also forging relationships with Bangladesh and the Philippines by knowledge sharing, primarily in the dengue risk analysis, and are underway to integrate our cold and heat wave toolkit into the Nepal government's website and also promote our anticipation toolkit Bahiro Alert.
By March 2023, we aim to hold our first consultation meeting for FOREWARN and officially launch up FOREWARN ahead of the disaster season, that is May, to ensure that we have our members ready to anticipate potential crisis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you as well to Pramila and Niraj, again, who are on the call today. And I am now handing over to Niraj to introduce our first speaker of the day. So Niraj, over to you.
Thank you very much, Milli. Hi everyone, my name is Niraj Sapkoda and I currently work as the technical specialist at the Crisis Anticipation Risk Financing team here at the Start for Nepal. As we go through a series of presentations, I personally want to welcome you all and also introduce our first presenter from Nepal, who's Mr. Santosh Dahal, who works as a senior technical advisor at Plan International. He's been working as a humanitarian and as a development worker for over 10 years. Over to you, Santoshji.
Okay, thank you, Niraj. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. So today I'll be presenting about the community-based Landslide early warning system, that is technical methodology and features that has been developed through funding of START networks, and which was implemented with a plan with the technical support from NACSA and IHRR, and especially thanks to Dr. Basanta Rajadhikari and Engineer Suraj Gautam from IHRR and Mr. Arun Mandari, who is in the call, especially Dr. Basanta is also in the call for their technical support, and Mr. Arun is from NACSA. So next slide, please. An overview of this presentation, that what is the Nepal context and landslide distribution in the Himalayas, and what was the overall methodologies, and especially field inventories and susceptibility mapping, model validation, determination of rainfall thresholds, and technology involved in the incorporation of forecast and nowcast, and especially the EWS mechanism. And another is that we also developed a household survey, and where we developed voluntary and risk assessment of individual households through the help of the mobile-based applications, and individual households also prepared their individual household disaster response and preparedness plan. And another is the web portal, web interface, and the mobile applications. Next, please. So Nepal is exposed to multiple hazards, and especially Nepal faces them various kinds of hazards, especially flood and landslide are especially seen in the monsoon period of Nepal, and especially in last 2 consecutive years due to the post-monsoon rainfall, especially in October. And many people have lost their life and properties from the post-monsoon rainfall. And in early warning system in Nepal is very robust, especially in case of flood, but in landslide we are still struggling on this space. And there is also, not only in the monsoon, there is also high rock weathering during the dry season also, especially in the highways of the country. And there are many other hazards associated with. So next slide, please. So I have a short time, so I'll go fast. Especially according to the landslides, there are more than 4,351 landslides events occurred from that 1971 to 2016, and over 5,000 fatalities every year, and that is over the 49 data, and around more than 100 deaths per year from the landslide. And you can see the maps with the red dots. where the landslides occurs. Next, please. And especially this community-based landslide early warning system was proposed, pilot project was piloted in one of the rural municipality of Calicut districts, where we choose the most vulnerable wards 2, 3, 4, and 7, which is shown in the map. Next, please. This Karnali region is one of Karnali province, we call it. Karnali province is one of the hazardous prone district, which the remoteness and as well as the low productivity of the land, especially there are both are arid zones. Next, please. And this map shows about the Calicut districts of Karnal province. Next. So what was the methodology? The methodology used was we used the database systems, which was the PQL SQL server was used, and if we have a technical colleagues here from IHR and NOXA, we can more describe in detail later if required. Next, please. And there was a server. Can you go please next? And there was a system administrator which was handled by the project team, and with a different user interface that was also given authority to the local government. And based on that, we use the mobile applications to collect the data that works both offline and online modes, because Calicut district is very remote districts where the network of especially the mobile networks is very low. And especially we did the household vulnerability assessment through the applications where all the data was calculated through the internationally approved formula. And based on that, we also developed the early warning mechanisms. Next, please. And especially we have a data visualization map that was developed through the data collected, and the data was exported to the individual household disaster preparedness and response plan, and that was distributed to the individual beneficiaries. Next. Next, please. Okay. So based on that, we use the Department of Hydrology and Meteorology forecast data, and they call it NWP, and that data was linked with the landslide sensitivity mapping. And based on that landslide sensitivity mapping, and based on the past years rainfall data, we developed a threshold mechanism, and that was especially given to the beneficiaries. Next. And especially the beneficiaries were informed, is the landslide happening or not, based on the trigger that was set through this project. Next, please. And this is the field interventions where we total landslide maps were 93 maps, and 39 were field verified through the field verification. Next. And this Mirianna rural municipality is one of the most landslide prone, and the shallow depth, which is the landslide are 1 to 2 meters of depth, and mostly the triggering factor was rain. As I talked earlier, the landslide, especially in those areas, are rainfall induced, and especially the causal factors are human activities. Especially in those areas, there is a huge haphazard rural road constructions, due to which the landslide was also triggered, and especially the soil and geography of those areas. And you can see the legend about that, where the landslides has occurred. Next. So these are the factors map that were developed through the DEM file, where the landslides were seen. Next, please. Next. Yep. Next, these are all maps, and if details required, we can go later on. Next, please. And these were the society mapping, where we can see the proximity of landslides, where the landslides is happening, high, moderate, and low areas. Next. And these are the FR and IV method that was developed for the landslide, and where the average rainfall was taken, and based on that, frequency ratio model bit was identified, and rainfall trigger action factor was determined. Where next slide, please. Where our research developed that 135 plus millimeter of rainfall, if that happens in those areas, then the landslide was triggered. And the history of landslide, that is rainfall records, were taken from one of the rainfall station that was in the district headquarters. And we obtained the history of landslides from 2008 to 2013, and especially the DHM daily rainfall data that were obtained from DHM. That is where my district headquarters was rainfall stations. Can anyone mute, please? It's disturbing. Okay. So the landslide thresholds where you can see the threshold limit and landslide was on a wet landslide warning zones were accordingly developed, and you can see the most of the rainfall landslides occurred when the rainfall is more. Next, please. Next. And you can see, okay. You can see the landslide warning zone, which is marked in red, where we can see that the rainfall always exceeds the threshold level, and the landslides were triggered based on those threshold calculated. Next, please. And what is the technology involved? That we have developed web-based applications and mobile-based applications. You can download through the that is Google Play Stores. That is we call it Poiro Alert, where the Java and SQLite. I think these details colleagues might tell later on if required. And we use the Kobo Toolbox and ODK data platform for data collection from the field. Next, please. And in correction, especially we have incorporated the government of Nepal data, that is Department of Hydrology and Meteorology data, to calculate all the thresholds and especially the 3 days rain forecast to the beneficiaries. Next, please. And especially if you go to the hydrology.gov.np or mfd.gov.np, you can find the different 3 days every day forecast. Based on that, that was forecast. If individual beneficiaries download the apps, the 3 days forecast would be projected in the app, and the people would be able to know that when is rainfall happening and how we need to be prepared. Next, please. And this is the rainfall occurring is shown in the map. And especially the okay, next, please. Especially the community-based landslide early warning system, what we did is that the threshold value was calculated based on the precipitation and DHM approach, where it was incorporated in the landslide sensitivity mapping, and based on that, the early warning mechanisms were set. And as per the rule of government of Nepal, the individual organizations or the research institution cannot send message to the beneficiaries. And so the warning message or danger message would be sent to the beneficiaries based on linking with the Department of Hydrology and Meteorology information, and especially the local government. Next, please. And we also, these are the pictures where we collected the household level information through the mobile-based applications and the enumerators training. Next. And all the GPS location of individual household was also calculated, and the calculation was done through both qualitative and quantitative informations. And especially this project was targeted for the from JC lens, where especially girls and women were targeted in the project area. Especially the people, the male people migrate to the foreign countries for the labor, and especially the women and girls are in the houses where they are targeted for this. Next. And this is the data visualization in the web portal, where we can see the social vulnerability of individual households, physical, economic, and environmental vulnerability of individual households are seen, where we can see the individual households are categorized in the 3 categories, that is high, medium, and low. Based on that, that will help the local government to support them in case of any disasters happens ahead of disaster. That is anticipation of any disasters that will happen, that can be seen, that can be responded immediately. Next, please. And this is the household risk assessment, where we collected data collection of individual households, where we collected information of around about 2,500 households in those 4 high risk wards, where we collected physical, social, environmental, economic, and the risk was calculated based on the formula, that is vulnerability into exposures by into hazard by adaptive capacity. And this is the web interface. We can paste the link in the web in the chat box, where we can see how the households are calculated. And this the access is not given to everyone because that based on the sensitivities of the information, the access is with the START network, and especially with us, and especially with the Palika government. And this is the mobile interface, where you can visualize everything what happens. You can see the map. You can see that danger level or warning level, and you can see the forecast. You can see 30 degrees Celsius. That is the 3 days forecast is seen. Next, please. And we also conducted the mock drills based on the household categorizations, and that was highly successful. Thank you. So if any questions, any queries, we would be happy to answer. And I request Dr. Basanta, Arun, and anything to add from your side technically. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Santosh. We are now collecting questions from the chat, although most of the questions have been answered in the chat itself. Just for the reference of Bibek for his next presentation, we will try to answer questions on the chat and not have a discussion afterwards, just in the interest of time. But still, if there are any questions, since we have just a couple of minutes left, if there are any questions, just put it on the chat and we'll try to answer them. Otherwise, we thank you, Santosh and the team for your great presentation, and hoping that people that are interested in this this kind of stuff, they will definitely reach out to you later on. And as we also see a lot of members from FOREWARN Nepal here in the participants list, we also encourage everyone to reach out to Santosh to know more about the landslide toolkit that has been developed. With this, I would like to invite our next speakers. I'm saying speakers because there are two speakers for this presentation. First of all, I would like to invite Mr. Bidyanath Burtel ji from Cordaid, who is a country manager at Cordaid, who has over 2 decades of humanitarian and development experience. And also Bibek Balla ji, who was working as a project coordinator at Cordaid, and now is working as a coordinator for disaster risk reduction and anticipatory action at the Human Development and Community Service. He also has over 8 years of experience in humanitarian and the development sector. So yeah, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Please limit the presentation in 15 minutes, and the questions will be answered in the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neeraj. This is Bidyanath Burtel, or Bidya in short. Hello, everybody, wherever you are on the globe. On behalf of Cordaid, here myself and Bibek, we are together here trying to present on the specific case on landslide anticipatory action regarding one of the areas. A lot of things, the technicalities, I'm going to touch upon the, let's say, who we are, and then how did we come up with this idea, and then what did we do exactly? And then Bibek will zoom into the technicalities of the findings of the whole thing. So Cordaid is, like Neeraj said, we are both humanitarian and development organization, international organization based in the Netherlands. We were known as Eco Cooperation in the past in Nepal. But for Start Network, we are comparatively newcomer in the country. So we joined, I think, in 2021, but globally we are there actually as Cordaid. And being a humanitarian organization, we have been working in Nepal especially on monsoon-induced disasters for quite some time now. And coincidentally, when we joined Start Network, we realized that there's something special that we can do together with Start Network Nepal. So we were already starting to respond to landslides in far west Dahal district during the time when we were also suggested to join the Start Network and participate in this anticipation alert. So we were already, there was a specific case in this particular two villages in Dahal district, where the landslide was actually happening quite frequently, and one specific case where there was a very deep-seated slide, as it is called, was already very visible. Even for a non-technical person like myself, it was very visible that there was something happening serious. So we decided that we will look into it in all the details possible, also borrowing from the technical tools that Plan has just explained very nicely in all the details. So I think there's no need to explain that details, how do we do the susceptibility mapping. But basically we wanted to make use of that because we knew that there is somewhere, sooner or later, this deep-seated slide is going to happen and really cause heavy loss, serious loss to the villages which is located in those particular areas. So that's why we want to do. That's how we joined into this campaign. So next slide, please. Yeah, like I said, it is historically prone to landslides, and these specific settlements in Balaucha and Oba were where we targeted. Something like 40 and 9 households directly. They were in real danger of being, washed down. Also the department of the concerned department also recognized that. They also recognized it highly susceptible to landslides. The locals also reportedly, during our own project implementation, local always said that there's serious danger of whole, hill coming down as a deep slide. And we, like I said, I'm not going to explain that anymore. But the thing is, we really wanted to base our intervention on specific scientific information that informs us to undertake this intervention. So that's the reason we approached START Network, and the plan had this specific toolkit that could be made use of. I think I already explained that, so we can move on. Yeah, so the history of, we discovered the history of landslide, which was actually, there were several cases of mass movement over the years, and then the most recent activity was somewhere around 2077 BS, which is roughly 2021. If I translate that correctly. So we noticed around 2021 October, there was a late monsoon, and the monsoon was quite heavy. And then the people have already started being nervous, and they started moving around. And then locals started reporting that the debris are flowing like anything, it's going to sink downwards. So the concern was raised basically. And so move on, please. I'm going to tell it as a story. So then we were approached, we tried to collaborate with the START Network on what can be done in the best possible way. So we don't want to repeat don't want to reinvent the same wheels. So we borrowed the toolkits from the Plan International that was just explained. And we did the consultations, field assessment, and all this kind of very, very technical susceptibility mapping exercise. From here on, I would request Bibek to take it forward, because it becomes more and more technical, which he's better versed at.
So hello everyone, this is Bibek from Cordaid, now in SDCS. So as Bidyanath explained, there was a analysis for action grant which supported the funding for developing the susceptibility mapping there. So we developed the susceptibility mapping, and we did the vulnerability survey of the household as well. So there are the results and discussions that came up with the study work. Next slide, please. Yes, sir. So yes, as Santosh explained, we developed the factor maps, and keeping the rainfall data intact, we developed the susceptibility map. So these were the factor maps that we used to develop the susceptibility maps. Next slide. Yeah, so as you can see, so this is the 3D view of the area where the landslide is occurred. So this is the Balaucha landslide, and one is in the Oba landslide. So as you can see in the pictures in the circle line, these are the land that has been shifted. Almost 10 meters of land were seen in this area. Next slide, please. So there are two fault lines as well that you can see in the. So we calculate the annual average rainfall and the 100-year return rainfall during this study. Next slide, please. Next slide. So as you can see, the susceptibility of landslide susceptibility increases with the rainfall. So there is a very high susceptibility of the landslide, with 12% increase in that area with the rainfall measurements. Next slide. So yes. So as we have already explained, the geology of that area was very much susceptible. Silty clay, permeable clay was found there. Next slide, please. I'm moving a bit fast on the slides, okay? So yes, we kept, so observation, the observation that you can see in the pictures. So 10 meter of displacement of land was seen in that area when we were doing the observation. Next slide. Yeah, as you can see in the pictures as well, picture speaks for itself. There were tension cracks and there were cracks on the water tank that can be visibly seen in that area. Yeah, the cracks inside the households. Look at the pipe. They have put the pipe in so that the water can flow down. Yeah, next slide. So yes, this was the, we do the drone survey, and the drone survey that is mapped on the land, and these are the houses, cracks on the houses, cracks on the land that are seen in that area. So these are the effects from the deep-seated landslide. So you can see from the Ova and the Balaucha in the pictures. Next slide, please. So yeah, as Santosh sir explained, we use the app, that Pyro Alert app, and the web-based app with the help of the team that he mentioned, and we develop all these households, which households are on risks. Next slide, Neeraj sir. Yeah. So these are the process that were used. So informed risk index was used to calculate the vulnerability and the risk. Next slide. Yeah, so the pictures of the drone survey that we did. Next slide, sir. So yes, so after this, as Santosh sir mentioned, we categorized into high risk area, high risk household, medium risk household, and low risk household, in which 33 households from Balaucha and 8 households from Ova were targeted for the anticipatory action project, which were considered as the high and the medium risk household from the all the study that we have done. Next slide, please. So yes, after this study was done, there was we looked into the DHM data, and from the 21 to 23rd, there was a prediction of high rainfall in that particular area. So what we did was, alert was raised. We did the alert. So alert was raised on 22 September for the Balaucha and Ova landslide. Next slide, please. So yes, after the alert was raised, we were awarded with the project, which was for about 40,000 above euro project. So the project started from 25th, and from the 29th onwards as well, there was a continuous rainfall in that area. So what happened was, there was not major landslide as we anticipated, but there were lots of minor landslide that occurred within that area. So what we did was, as soon as the project was awarded to us, we shifted all those vulnerable households to the safer location, which was already identified during the study as well. And next slide, please. So what we did was, we already had managed all the stuffs. So we went on to build 40 tents for 40 households with tarpaulins, mattress, and solar panels as well. So we also did as a health intervention, first aid kits, psychosocial counseling was managed. As for the wash, we developed separated toilets for male and female for menstrual hygiene, hand washing station, and hygiene kits were also distributed to the people. Next slide, please. So yes, as for the nutritional value, we provided with them with the food items with nutritional top-ups for 3 pregnant women. Cash for work was provided to all vulnerable 40 households. Next slide, please. So yes, you can see the total project coverage was for 140 households. 40 households we did as the vulnerable household. Other households were also vulnerable. So within that project, we also supported the 100 odd households as well. So yes, this is the data for NFI distribution and cash for work. Next slide, please. So yes, these are some of the pictures that we did for the shelter support. So this was the safer location where we set up the tent, as you can see in the pictures. 40 shelter were provided, so we also provided them with the hygiene kits, and for complaint response mechanism, we also set up the CRM box as well. Next slide. So yes, the hand washing station that we established. So yes, these are the testimonies from the local. So they have always been in fear of the landslide from the past 3 years. So for this year, they had a little, they were more relieved as they were already shifted to the safer location when there was rain. Next slide, please. So same testimonies from the local people. I have list. So there were few coverage from the national newspaper of our anticipation activities in that area. Next slide, please. So yes, there were lots of challenges. So so we always had a back of our mind that was our anticipation alert correct or not. So that was always the question. That was always the question asked by the government people, local people. So yes, of landslide regularly while we were working in that area, and there were inaccessibility of road due to landslide while it was raining continuously during that time. And the community does not have a permanent settlement yet because the government is not able to provide them with a permanent location yet. So that is the challenge as well. There were lots of learning. So I'm only going to touch up in the few learnings. So the learning is we have to correct, we could not always predict the correct time of the landslide. So we always had the question that, is this the right time for anticipation alert project? But as per the study and as per the rainfall data, we anticipated for the project. And what all the stuffs that we provided to the local people, they will be handed over to the government, which is not used. So the government, until the permanent location is provided, they will themselves do the anticipation alert in the future, until the permanent locations are provided. Next slide. I think my time is over now. So there was a forecast for continuous for 3 days, which was accurate. So it was very much helpful for anticipating the landslide based on the studies. Yeah, so we had already, Cordaid has already the presence in that area, which made us easy to act quickly to provide the support and to relocate the people fast in that area. So the Anticipatory project is closely linked with vulnerable people's fear and hope. These emotions should always be respected during this process. So yeah, this is very important. So people's fear and hope must be respected during this process. And we also did the drone survey to during the process of society mapping. So it was new for us as well, which provided us with greater resolution images for satellite for society mapping, which was good. Yeah, so I think this is the last slide. Yeah, so the Cordaid is again supporting the people after that anticipation project as well. So we are supporting for the livelihood options that have to be provided for the long-term process. We are also supporting them with the documentation for NDRRMA, so they can work on for the permanent settlements. They can apply for the grant from the government. And we are also through these things we are also supporting those people after the project ends as well. So yes, I think Neeraj sir and all teams, we want to thank you for this. If any questions, we would be happy to answer. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Bibek ji and Bidyanath ji, for your wonderful presentation. As we are going through other presentations as well, we will be answering the questions on the side on the chat box. Thank you for your questions. With this, I will hand it back to Milli for the next course of action. Thank you.
Thank you, Neeraj, and thank you also to Santosh, Bibek and Bidya for your fantastic presentations there. As Neeraj says, we are going through answering and responding to comments and questions in the chat, so please do feel free to continue to post those as we go. But for now, we will move on to our next speaker. So next we have Dr. Mirianna Budimir and Dr. Joanne Robbins, who will be speaking about the LandSLIP Early Warnings Systems project. So this was a 5-year project with the objective of developing a prototype landslide forecasting system in 2 test sites in India. Dr. Budimir is the Senior Climate and Resilience Expert at Practical Action and has expertise in the effects of cascading natural hazards. And Dr. Joanne Robbins leads the UK Met Office's Weather Impacts team, and her work focuses on risk and impact modelling for improved forecasting and warning of hydrometeorological hazards. And both Practical Action and the UK Met Office were research partners in the LandSLIP consortium. Mirianna, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Milli, for that wonderful introduction. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Okay. Next slide, please. Oh, there's a little bit of a glitch. We might have a bit of a problem with the slides. It's fine. So I'm going to be talking to you about the LandSLIP project, which was operating in India. So it's a project that was funded by FCDO and the UKRI Natural Environmental Research Council. It was a research into action project funded underneath the Science for Humanitarian Emergencies and Resilience programme. So this project brought together experts from across different disciplines, so geological experts, hydrological, meteorological experts, operational forecasters, researchers based from physical and social science, practitioners, NGOs, and one of the key partners was the Geological Survey of India, who are mandated within India for doing landslide forecasting. We also worked very closely with our Indian stakeholders and our authorities, so at national, state and district level. We had local NGOs working within the 2 study areas where we were working, Save the Hills and Keystone Foundation. And the aim of this was to be thinking about how can we develop a regional scale landslide forecasting system that combines the meteorological landslide information and testing that out in terms of a potential prototype system in Nilgiris and Darjeeling area in India. Next slide, please. Yeah, it's loading the questions. So the context of India is about 12.6% of the land in India is prone to landslide hazards. The increases in populations, human activities, so deforestation, logging, burning, development, are increasing the potential for landsliding in those susceptible regions. And we, underneath the SHEAR program, is mostly focused on forecasting, forecast-based early action, etc. So the approach was using landslide early warning systems as an approach to risk mitigation, and looking at how we can do that across different scales. Next slide, please. So in terms of the scale that we're actually looking at, so local community-based landslide early warning systems are really thinking about kind of single host hill slope landslide. Whereas if you're thinking about territorial landslide early warning systems, we're thinking about kind of a wider population of landslides across a different wider landscape. So the aim with there were existing community-based local landslide early warning systems in India, and we were looking at how do you think about that in terms of a territorial scaled system that could then be potentially scaled up across India. Next slide. So we first looked into what the data availability was, looked at landslide observations. We developed some landslide susceptibility maps for different landslide types. Also collected new landslide data using SAR remote sensing, conducted field surveys to understand the different types of landslides that were operating in the context that we were working in. And then we also recognized that there was a need for more landslide observational data. So we worked with Amrita University to develop an app, and also worked with local volunteers, local district authorities and others, and Geological Survey of India to develop a framework and a form that could be filled in, that can be used for the app, and also paper-based and online submissions to track landslides and new landslide observations, to ensure that there's new data on landslides coming in that has the sufficient level of information that can support landslide forecasting, or support an improved landslide forecasting skill in the future. Next slide. And then I'm hopefully going to hand over to my colleague, Joanne Robbins from UK Met Office to talk through the different forecasting potential that we looked into. Jo, are you online?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Mirianna. So yes, we developed, in terms of the forecasting system, everyone I think will be aware that there are challenges with forecast skill, particularly when we're looking at heavy rainfall events which lead to landslides. And so we wanted to make sure that we were leveraging the skill of forecast models appropriately in the development of these tools. And therefore we focused on two ranges. The short range, which as shown here, was from 24 hours up to 72 hours, and leveraged existing skill sets where we looked at accumulated rainfall and duration and applied thresholds to different types of numerical weather prediction models. So regional, which were about 4 kilometers, and then also global, which were coarser resolution. We also then wanted to utilize medium range forecasting tools. And this enables you to get an increased lead time in terms of the warning that can be provided. So in this particular instance, we were looking at historical assessments of weather patterns, which might then lead to landslide events. So a weather pattern represents a synoptic or large-scale atmospheric circulation system, which might then lead to heavy rainfall and therefore the potential for landslides. Next slide, please. So in this context, we wanted to do an analysis of all of the landslides in our data set that Mirianna mentioned earlier. And we wanted to review how rainfall contributed to those historic landslide events and also relate them to weather patterns and be able to understand how those weather patterns contributed to the landslides that were observed. And from this, we were able to identify sets of high-risk weather patterns, which were then able to generate a forecasting system that allowed us to see periods over a 15-day lead time when landslides might be more likely. So if you look at the plot on the right-hand side, you can see that there was a period roughly between the 13th and the 19th, which indicates that there would be a higher likelihood for landslide occurrence because there were weather patterns affecting India at that time, which could have included heavy rainfall events and therefore increased likelihood of landslides. So this enabled us to generate a 15-day forecast. I'll now pass back to Mirianna and hopefully she can go through the remainders.
Thanks, Jo. So with all of this data, the observations, the forecast information at different timescales, and the other maps that we collected, and the models in terms of having a probabilistic and a forecast model, to pull this together to be able to do something with it that will be providing useful information for downstream user groups. We've developed an online decision support dashboard. So this pulled together the different types of information, was able to compare different observations and forecasts, look at different layers of information in terms of landslide susceptibility. And this was designed so that the Geological Survey of India would be able to holistically look at all of the information available on a day-to-day basis and understand what was going on within the context that they were working in. Next slide. So you can see here all of the different dynamic forecasting modeling data products, the different lead times that was available, the land susceptibility maps and landslide inventory data, and other sources of data that we were pulling into the online decision support dashboard. So this is collecting that information into one area that for the Geological Survey of India to use. Next slide. So from this, then we had to be thinking about what happens with this information. How does this get down to the appropriate people, appropriate authorities to make decisions in a more of a holistic landslide early warning system? So we're mostly focusing previously on how do we forecast it, is it possible, what can we produce? We then mapped out who were the institutional stakeholders within India who were mandated with either forecasting, producing warning information or disseminating warning information. and worked with them to understand for a potential future landslide early warning system in India, who would hold those responsibilities and who needed to be in the loop, who needed to have responsibility for taking early action at the local scale or for disseminating that warning message further to the public or other local stakeholders. So we mapped these out and then worked out that we would need to develop a daily bulletin that would be sent out during the monsoon through high periods of rainfall and high landslide risk that would go to various different levels of disaster management authorities, and ultimately aiming to directly go to the district authorities on a daily basis throughout the monsoon to provide information about what was happening in terms of landslide forecast risk. We developed also a guidance manual in terms of how to interpret that, and did a lot of kind of workshops and rollouts in terms of with the district authorities, so that they understood what that bulletin was saying and what potentially they could do in the future. But it was very much within a prototype system, testing out this as a case study in those two different contexts. And we also developed standard operating procedures for the development of that bulletin, so that Geological Survey of India could use the dashboard and easily create daily bulletins without having to start from scratch each time. Next slide. So this is what the bulletin looks like by the end of the project. So it's a 2-page document. The first page provides live updated information around landslide forecasting, the short-term and the medium-range forecasts. The second page has more static information in terms of the susceptibility, identified areas of infrastructure, roads, rail, key towns, etc., and then some caveat information in terms of how to interpret this. This is obviously in package with the fuller manual that goes into more detail about how to interpret it, but as a kind of a refresh each day as to how to a reminder of the key points of how to interpret this information. So it was really trying to synthesize that complex variety of information that was available, so that it was suitable for those district authorities who may not have a technical background in landslides or in forecasting or that sort of background. We developed the framework and the content for this 2-page bulletin through an iterative process, working across different physical science, social science, and then operational user group domains. So making sure that the information that was provided was accurate and scientifically robust and could be backed up by evidence, but actually at the same time was easy to be understood by those who needed to take decisions around that information. So it was an iterative co-development process over the course of probably about 2 to 3 years to develop this 2-page bulletin. And it was produced daily during the monsoon of 2020 and 2021 within a closed prototype system. And then we derived the support from the decision support dashboard and the standard operating procedures. So here you can see how all of this fits together. You've got the multiple different types of data streams coming together and going into this dashboard, and then how that information then flows through the established organizations and authorities down to the district authorities. And that is where we decided to close the loop for this prototype system within 5 years. It was a huge amount of work to be done just to be able to get that kind of forecasting capability and embed that within a prototype system. But the aim was always to be thinking about how do we take this forecast information and think about it in terms of sustainability and legacy and knowledge for particularly Geological Survey of India, and then also how they work with district authorities, national and regional stakeholders to work towards a holistic early warning system. So the bits that are really kind of missing from the work that we were able to achieve within LandSLIP were the active dissemination and communication down to the MR, and also the response capability. So through the process, we worked with Geological Survey of India to identify ways forward. So talk about things that they need to be considering moving forward to go from this prototype system to something that was operational in the districts that we were already working in, how to work with those stakeholders that maybe they previously haven't worked that closely with in terms of an operational system, and then how to be thinking about going beyond that and what do the district authorities need to be considering in terms of early action protocols, further dissemination, etc., etc. And then thinking about, well, if we can get it operational within those two contexts, what does it look like if we wanted to try this out in different contexts throughout India? What's the route to scale? What are the things to consider to try this approach, or different approaches, different models in different contexts to develop that forecasting capability and then be able to take it to scale to ultimately have a national landslide forecasting and early warning system in India. Next slide. So there's further information on the LandSLIP website. I highly recommend, if you want more information, to go directly there. There are various shorter knowledge products that can conceptualize each of those different elements that we talked about in terms of the forecasting, the data, the communication, and kind of the ways forward. So further information is available there, but we're available for questions here as well. And the route through LandSLIP has enabled Geological Survey of India to set up a national landslide forecasting centre in which they're using the knowledge that they gained from LandSLIP to think about how do they set that up and roll that out across India to establish a national landslide early warning system. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mirianna, and thank you both for such an interesting presentation on the LandSLIP landslide forecasting system. The next speaker I believe we'll be moving on to is Professor Michele Calvello. So Michele will be talking about the LandAware network and its working groups. LandAware is an international network focused on landslide early warning systems, and actions are carried out by these working groups. And Professor Michele Calvello is a researcher and professor at the University of Salerno in Italy, and his research focuses on the assessment and management of landslide risk. Professor Calvello, over to you. Thank you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Okay, cool. So thank you very much for the invitation and for the chance to present the LandAware network to the people and to the community, the FOREWARN community. It's not going to be only me talking, but I will hand over to other two members of the network after my initial introduction. So you can move on to the next slide, please. The network, you can find more information on the web. As usual, we go on the web for things. We are using the web as a dissemination tool of our activities. So everything we do is essentially they are reported on the web. We have different sections, so you can refer to our website, landaware.org, for further information. Next, please. I can tell you that we started not very long ago, in July 2020, so a little more than 2 years and a half ago. And the network is intended to be a network of people, like people, individuals, managers, researchers, stakeholders interested in landslide early warning systems, of course, for different reasons, for research, for ongoing activities, institutional activities in their institutions, and also interested in developing and promoting guidelines, best practices by interacting, by sharing experiences, by interacting in a network setting. So that was the aim of our initial installment of the network. And since there, you can move on to the next slide, please. We had an initial executive committee. I can see that some of the people, of course, are also here today. That was 3 years ago, and this one is for the next 2 years. Essentially, it's Europe-centric, but in terms of people managing the activities at the moment, because that's where it started. It started out of some experiences that go back to many years ago, an initial conference that was done in Oslo, organized by Graziella Devoli, that you will meet afterwards, and another one organized in Italy, in Perugia. But anyway, if you move on to next slide, you can see that we have a worldwide reach. I checked a couple of weeks ago, and this is our current membership numbers coming from pretty much all over the world, pretty much. You know, we're covering some areas more, some nations more. If you go to next slide, just some details on some of the nations. You can see Italy, a lot of members from Italy. I am from Italy, because like we are studying landslides a lot, and there is an interest in developing warning systems in Italy, but there is also members in many other countries. You know, Norway, I told you about the initial workshop, and then also countries that are outside Europe, like India. I can see a good presence. Anyway, moving on, please. Next. We developed some network-wide activities. Stop. For instance, we started in 2020 with a kickoff online. You remember, it was also pandemic time. And again, online, we organized a round-the-clock conference, trying to accommodate for the different, time zones. And this round-the-clock conference, we had 24 hours of engaging activities, discussions, presentations, and stuff about landslide early warning, with a lot of participants, not all of them connected all the time, of course, from different countries. Move on to next. And you can see that we recorded, as I said, we are trying to disseminate what we do. So we recorded most of these presentations of that May Day. So if you are interested, you can go back, go online and check on our YouTube channel whether there are some presentations that you want to look at. Next, please. We also have, finally, we managed to meet in person after 2 years, and it was a few months ago in October in Switzerland. And again, out of that, besides this 3 days, interesting workshop with site visits on some sites in Switzerland organized by Manfred Stali from WSL, there is also a report that you can read if you're interested, as a summary of the first 2 years of activity, essentially, of the network, as well as presentations recorded online. Again, you can go back and watch things on demand. Next, please. I want to say, though, that besides these network-wide activities, the work is carried out by means of working groups. And working groups are the essence of this network. And so different working groups doing different things. Move on to next, please. I can tell you that there are, at the moment, 5 active working groups. Up to a few months ago, there were 7, 8. And in the next part of my presentation, next slide, please, you will be hearing from one of the groups that essentially ended his mission, his activities. And you will be hearing about the catalog of landslide early warning systems, and also one of the most recent groups, IoT-based methods and analysis. Without further ado, if Graziella is online, I'm assuming she is, I can leave the floor to her. And next slide, and then it will be Graziella Devoli talking about it.
Yes, thank you. Do you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I was working I was co-chairing the working group 1 together with Hiroaki Nakaya from Japan, and Mauro Rossi from Italy, and Angel Valdivieso from Ecuador. So in this working group, we work essentially to collect information about existing catalog, existing landslide early warning system. So we want to create a state of the art. We knew, of course, that there were already some article resuming about the existing catalog, but we knew as well that there are a lot of landslide early warning system out there that are not published, or there is no information in literature in English, or in most are in original language. So you will we work on made both a glossary of terms that are specific used in English, and a most update catalog, and you will find this also in our web page. Next, please. So the catalog, as I mentioned, there were 4 articles that have been written in the past years, summarize what is existing worldwide in terms of early warning system. And we had some specific for rapid mass movement, for local, for territorial or geographical. And in addition to this, so at the end, we managed to collect information that was in those articles, plus interview with our LandAware members. And we have at the moment 95 Landslide early warning system registered in the catalog. So we have 31 more than the previous overview. Next one. So most of the existing early warning are in Europe. We have in the America, including North and South America and Central America, we have 27, Asia 19, and 1 is worldwide, Oceania 2. And the majority are local one. We have also, which are the blue color in the picture, regional, and 7% are national. Most of them are designed for 3 or more type of landslide, especially the regional one, and usually are rainfall-induced landslide. But there are a lot of local specific for rock slide or rock avalanche. Next, please. So here you see an overview of where they are located, the local one. So there are quite a lot, maybe in yeah, you cannot see very well, but maybe Norway and Italy, where in Norway we have a lot of local for rock avalanche, but we have some also in China or in Central America, which some of them are dismissed. Next one. And here is where the regional scale are located. Of course, Italy is the one with most number because they have regional early warning system. And the next one where I think we see the national scale. So there are very few of them. Some are well established, other are as a prototype, but few of them. Next. So here also I will show an example of early warning terms that we decide to create a glossary because there is a lot of existing terms with different definition, or maybe some terms are not defined at all. And so we try to provide an overview of what is available on these terms. So this is also available on our webpage. And next one, I think I'm finished. Yeah, so Luca can continue.
Yes, I hope you can see me and hear me well. Can you please confirm?
Yes, we do.
Great, yeah. It's a pleasure to briefly describe what we are doing in the LandAware network. I am Luca Picciullo. I am part of the board of the LandAware group, and I'm also leading this new working group on the IoT-based monitoring, modeling, I would say, and warning. So I just want to quickly describe what we are doing in the next, if we go to next slide, please. Yeah, so we start first from the objectives, and then I will briefly describe what we have done so far and what we are planning to do in the upcoming month. So the objective is basically to promote the application and innovation and traditional sensor in the IoT. So we want to have a better understanding of how to monitor things in real time, and then to use these monitored data for modeling, for having a real-time modeling and then real-time warning. So this is the general aim, and in this working group we aim at sharing knowledge, information in a collaborative environment, and also to share case studies and data, and also like modeling approaches. If we go to the next slide, please. Here we see the institutes involved so far. So as you can see, there are many, not only universities, but also research institutes and also companies and also non-governmental institutes. If you go to the next slide, we will also see what's the timeline. So we can, if you click again one more time, then you will see some things appearing in the slide. Yes, so we have done so far three workshops. We have done a first kickoff and then workshops. And then what we are gonna do is tomorrow we are gonna have a joint workshop together with the technical committee on machine learning. And this workshop is about landslide warnings and prediction using IoT and machine learning. I will post the link here in the chat, but if you are interested, either you follow the link that I'm gonna post in the chat, or you can send me an email and I will share the information. And then the plan is to have another workshop. Now, if we go back to, yeah, that's great. To have another workshop in March, April, and then we are going to have a physical meeting at EGU because many of us will be present there. Then there will be a workshop about landslide here in Oslo that will be arranged by NGI, and this is another occasion to meet physically. And then we are planning to have a physical meeting of our working group perhaps in September here at NGI in Oslo. Next slide, please. Now I want to quickly show what we have done so far, what are the workshops that we have already carried out and what are the topics. So the first one was on seismic noise and geophysical monitoring. I can share with you the slides of the three invited speakers that were Eric LaRose, Jim Whiteley, and Marco Orzata Shimley. If we go to the next slide, workshop 2 was on real-time monitoring strategies for landslide risk management, where we were describing 3 case studies. If you are interested to have to watch this video, everything is recorded and you can see the YouTube link at the bottom of the slide in yellow. Next one is workshop 3 that we have done about how to use the IoT monitored data. And it was Ben Myrus, myself, and Professor Roberto Greco making the presentations. And also in this case, we have recordings, and you can follow the link at the bottom to watch the workshop. I have a few more slides. What are the possible outcomes of this working group is to, as I said, to share knowledges, and that's the reason of the workshops we are doing, but also to share data, to share case studies, and to share models or way of doing things with IoT. Next and final slide is, if you are interested to join us, well, there are no rules. You basically need to register on the LandAware website and then to tick the box that you want to participate and being informed of the activities of this working group. You can follow the link in blue, and if this is the first time that you are aware of this working group, I will ask you to take your phone and use this QR code and fill in the questionnaire, and you will be in the data set, and I will send you the email and invitations to the next and upcoming workshops. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Luca. Thank you, Graziella. You can move on to my final 2 slides. Next, please. Just to reiterate what Luca has been already saying, if you want to get news from us in general, from LandAware or from the specific working groups, you can connect with us. You can subscribe to the newsletter. It's easy. There is a simple, email to fill, but even joining is relatively easy. It's just like giving information about you. So up to you, whatever you want to do with LandAware, watching or getting news or being informed, we are there. Thank you very much. And I guess next slide will be a thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michele, and also to Graziella and Luca for presenting the really interesting work of LandAware. It's great to hear from you all. As I say, I will share these slides after the meeting if anybody would like to follow up on any of those links that have been shared. But for now, I'm handing over to Anna Dizon, who is our FOREWARN coordinator for the Philippines, to present our next speaker. Anna, over to you.
Thank you very much, Milli. And now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Jenielyn Padrones. She is an associate professor at the Institute of Renewable Natural Resources of the University of the Philippines in Los Baños, College of Forestry and Natural Resources. She has a Doctor of Resource Science degree from the Akita University in Japan, and her research fields are geology, geochemistry, and landslide susceptibility assessment. She's also currently a project staff, the landslide inventories for geohazards preparedness and timely advisories in the Philippines, or Project LIGTAS, a project funded by the Department of Science and Technology, or shared Philippine Council for Industry, Energy, and Emerging Technology Research and Development. She's also one of the supervisors of our interns who supported the review of the rainfall threshold for the provinces of Albay and Sorsogon, and also conducted additional landslide inventory in those two provinces. Dr. Jen Padrones, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon or good evening, everyone from the Philippines. Thank you, Ma'am Anna, for that introduction. So on behalf of Project LIGTAS, I'll be presenting our work on early warning for rainfall landslide, particularly on shallow landslides in the Philippines. So next slide, please. So in the Philippines, we know that there are a lot of landslide occurrences. So in Southeast Asia, approximately 46% actually of the rainfall triggered landslide occur in the Philippines. And these are some of the news that exemplify some of the landslide that have occurred in the Philippines. And this usually happens yearly, and with various areas experiencing loss of lives and properties during rainy season. And among these are those that are caused by landslides. So next slide, please. So the Philippines is vulnerable to natural hazards and extreme weather disturbances. And as you know, the geographic location of the country, which is in the tropics, is in the superhighway of tropical cyclones. We get about 19 to 21 tropical cyclones each year. Added to that are the intertropical convergence zone and the different monsoons. So with these geoclimatic conditions, it predisposes our country to perennially experience weather-related shocks every year, and that includes landslide. So our group is working on shallow landslide. Next slide, please. So shallow landslide are underestimated hazards because of these three major reasons. First, because they remain largely underreported. And secondly, frequent shallow landslide in marginalized areas are non-fatal, which do not attract the attention of the local officials. So it does not initiate a timely response. And third, mitigation intervention varies across contexts and time scales. So next slide, please. So our team recognized the lack of attention given to shallow landslide and identified the gaps related to the management and also understanding the shallow landslides that are happening in our country. So we proposed this project to the Department of Science and Technology, and the project is Landslide Investigations on Geohazards for Timely Advisories in the Philippines. And we are currently on our second phase from 2021 to 2023. Our first phase started last 2017. So next slide, please. So the project leverages recent technological and conceptual breakthroughs in data collection, processing, and communication to advance resilience building in data scars and mountain communities. So in particular, we identified three convergent evolutions that may hold great promise. First is on technological development in sensor networks and data management, wherein we set up automatic weather stations and soil moisture sensors. And we also generate enhanced landslide susceptibility maps and have also looked into the soil physical properties to identify and understand the causative factors for landslide occurrence. And second, web and cloud-based ICT, which makes it possible to build more powerful analysis and prediction systems And part of that are website development. We also generated site-specific rainfall landslide thresholds. And also we have current landslide database, which is the largest database that you could find now in the country. And lastly, on citizen science, so this enables a more tailored and targeted flow of information for knowledge co-creation and decision making. So the objective is to have an early warning system towards landslide risk reduction and disaster resilience. So next slide, please. So these are just some of the details about the project on technological development. So we have installed 16 automatic weather stations. So the right side figure shows the different locations of those AWS. So particularly in the Luzon area, Benguet, Laguna, Batangas region, and in Bicol province. And then next slide, please. We have we are going to develop landslide susceptibility maps. So these are just some of the thematic maps that we are working on right now and eventually will be used for the generation of the landslide susceptibility map. So we have 2 study sites now, the Benguet province in the southern Tagalog, which is a volcanic area for the southern Tagalog region. And for the Benguet province, these are mostly the mineralized areas in the Philippines. So next slide, please. The soil component is also being studied by our team to correlate soil properties with landslide occurrences. So these are some of the physical properties that were measured. And aside from laboratory setting, we also are doing collection on site through installation of equipment such as infiltrometer, tensiometer, and time domain reflectometer for soil moisture determination. Next slide, please. So these are examples of some of the data that we have on soil, and particularly these soil samples are taken from the different landslide areas. I think there should be, there's a graph there, and it shows the plasticity chart, which highlights the different water content or the critical water content at different phases. So this shows the plasticity of the different samples. And we also have data on hydraulic conductivity, which would be related to the infiltration of water. And that could be used for site-specific slope failure studies. So next slide, please. The project is also doing radar data processing. So the figure on the left side show a sample that is converted from radar reflectivity to rainfall map. So the rainfall rate map is the one that we actually need for the generation of the rainfall landslide threshold. But in order to do the conversion into the rain rate map, we need to do the ZR relation. So that's why we installed this disdrometer. So this is an instrument that measures shape and size of the rainfall. And with that data, we were able to get or derive a ZR relation, which was published by Macoroy et al. In 2021. And currently, our Weather Bureau, the Pag-asa, is using this ZR relation also in the process that they are doing for their generation of ZR relation for specific sites. And for the phase 2 of our project, we are also currently working on the continued derivation of the ZR relation. So next slide, please. So the project has a website, and this is the landing page for that website. It contains information on the different data that are being acquired by the project, and also it has information on the different landslide occurrences in the Philippines, and some information on social media, and also weather-related information from our Weather Bureau. So next slide, please. We also have on the next slide a site-specific rainfall landslide threshold. So this one includes the threshold that was generated using the intensity duration formula. So intensity is related to how much rainfall would trigger landslide or slope failure. And for the duration, how long after the rain will that slope failure happen? So currently, our statistical models focus on rainfall intensity and antecedent rainfall. But we are going to move forward by disaggregating this data to look at the different durations or land covers or other parameters. And in the interest of providing useful information to our partners, the average or the median line, the ones in blue lines, in the graph here are already considered as indicative of the average threshold per site. So we've computed rainfall landslide threshold for Benguet province. So this is the mineralized area. And the blue here is the threshold for this area is 12 millimeter per hour. So that's the intensity and duration. So in that, this is quite low, but this is actually higher than what was already published for the Benguet region. And then for the volcanic regions of Bicol, so that's 27 millimeter per hour. And for Calabarzon, which is also composed of volcanic rocks, that's 92 millimeter per hour rainfall landslide threshold. So this 92 is actually near the threshold that is set by Pag-asa, which is our weather bureau, which is 100 millimeter per hour. So this rainfall landslide threshold have been incorporated in the early warning system that I'll be presenting later. Moreover, the methodology that was used in the generation of this threshold is easily replicable. So we need simple data requirements, simple processing, and simple solution. So we know that this one has a higher chance of adoption, and we are looking into capacitating other individuals and researchers and SUCs that are working on rainfall landslide thresholds also, and we will help them in doing the same methodology. So next slide, please. So the project has a landslide database. So if you click on the video, it will show you the interface for the landslide database. We currently have about only 1,900, but this is more than a lot already comparing to what we have when we started the project. And you can get information on the different landslide that are in the database. You could also check for the different areas with occurrences of landslide and check the details of those landslide if we have data for that. So that's already included in the project website. Next slide, please. So we also did social survey. So this is the one that was mentioned by Ma'am Anna earlier that was supported by START Network. We did social survey, and we've asked social demographics, perceived risk to landslide, sources of landslide information, available early warning system, and needed information. And the social survey actually proved to be a good measure in getting additional landslide information from the community, since they are the one that have recollection on when and what time the landslide happened. And this information is actually important in the rainfall landslide threshold that I presented earlier. So the threshold generation, because we needed that data on the timing when the landslide happened. So in most cases, those data are not available in any news information. So the social survey helped a lot in the generation of the data that we need. So next slide, please. So the result of this survey allowed us to know the characteristics of the target stakeholder and look into how risk can be better communicated to the public or to the community. And some of the results of the survey showed that despite living near or in areas that are prone to landslide, several of these respondents believe that they are not at risk. So in some survey also, they prefer local officials to be the source of information with regard to landslide. So improving the capacity of the local officials to provide more information should be built on. And we are working on that on this project. So next slide, please. So basically, our source of data for the landslide occurrences is in news, in social media reports, and national government agencies. And we also have this crowdsourcing platform wherein citizens could report landslide occurrences in an area. And this is a relatively easy to use tool that the individuals or the communities could use in reporting. And of course, the data that are coming in from the citizens would be validated by the project team. So next slide, please. We also have capacity building. So we did trainings on the use of automatic weather stations and also the maintenance of those installed automatic weather stations in several areas, and also on the use of geographic information system for disaster risk reduction and management. So next slide, please. So this is the process flow for the Project LIGTAS website. We could have landslide reports, and then there would be a report validation, landslide database, and also access to that data is allowed. Utilizing all the data that is in the website, we have this landslide interactive map, and also some early warning system at the end. So provided here also is a landslide warning advisory guide that we have modified from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Mines and Geosciences Bureau, the agency that is mandated for hazards such as landslide that are related to rainfall. So the different color codes are here. So for example, red would mean that the threshold has been reached and there might be landslide occurrences in the area already. So the next slide would show you how the early warning system of the project is embedded into the portal or in the website. And this could serve as decision support tool for landslide warning advisory. So that would be in the next slide. So the circle in this slide shows the different layers of the 20 kilometer radius that is within the reach of the automatic weather station. So we are only limited to what within the reach of the AWS, and the color represents the different warning level. So it automatically changes based on the rainfall landslide threshold in that site. So the rainfall landslide threshold was the one that I presented earlier. So it was already incorporated and it is site specific already. So utilizing the generated data or the RL threshold that we already calculated. And in the website, the landslide susceptibility map of the Mines and Geosciences Bureau is already incorporated. So the communities could check the susceptibility level of their area. So next slide, please. So for the project's way forward, we are working into the integration of this with the local and national stakeholder. We are currently in talks with the different mandated agencies in the Philippines for this data to be integrated into their work. And also we are looking to capacity development, particularly on generating site-specific landslide threshold for other regions. So we're working with our project partners on this. So next slide. So these are just some information about Project LIGTAS. Next slide, please. So we are funded by the Department of Science and Technology. We have a lot of project partners from national government agencies, international partners, particular universities from Taiwan, state universities and local government agencies. And we have other institutions. So START Network is one of our project partner. Next slide shows you the core team of Project LIGTAS. And the next slide is on the details of Project LIGTAS. So to know more about the project and help us build our national landslide database, you can scan the QR code or visit our website. That would be all. Maraming salamat po and have a great day.
Thank you very much, Dr. Padrones. Yeah, for your question, you can just type it in the chat box, and then I would like to call in my colleague Ashraful Haq from Bangladesh to introduce the next speaker. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ashraf. Nice meeting you all. And so in Bangladesh, we are trying to develop community-based landslide early warning system since 2020. And here with us, one of the landslide FOREWARN expert, Nafis Fuad, who has been in the process for developing one of the very first landslide susceptible mapping report, and together with him, we developed a landslide threshold for Rangamati and the Bandarban, two hilly districts in Bangladesh. By training, Nafis Fuad is an urban planner beside his specialization on GIS and data science. And now he has been serving Kailash, Bangladesh on the project Landslide Early Warning System. So he's the coordinator right now. Now I'm inviting Nafis Fuad to lead us on your findings and study on this landslide early warning system. So over to you, Nafis. I can see like he just texted like he's having some internet issues from his side. He was here in the beginning. Okay. So Milli, what do you think?
Yeah, okay, that's not a problem. I think maybe we could open for a couple of questions for the previous speakers, just for a couple of minutes. If anybody has any, please feel free to raise your hand or to post those in the chat, and we can invite you to ask those just while Nafis is sorting out his internet challenges. Are there any questions for previous speakers?
Hi.
Hi.
You're
Yeah,
from
please.
Afghanistan, the Afghanistan humanitarian hub. Thank you. Excellent presentations. My question goes to the presenter from Nepal, where they had this excellent mobile application. And also, my interest is, I would like to know how pretty much everyone who has developed these excellent data-driven systems, how do you make sure that what are the kind of systems and strategies in place that makes your tools constantly evolve, both to respond to the need for information and also to the evolving nature of hazards? And also, how do you incorporate new emerging information technologies into your systems? So highly technical question, but I would love to know your strategies.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Are there any speakers who would like to respond to that first? I know it was aimed at colleagues in Nepal. Santosh, I can see you've come off.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the good questions. It might be too technical. We have our technical team also here. They may also add on that. I think many applications have been evolving throughout the world. And in Nepal also, especially the digital technologies for the landslide or the flood and other multi-hazard all-in-one system is emerging. We at this stage, based on the requirement and based on the needs, we have to incorporate all the international tools that has been developed, but we need to explore on that. But sure, we think we can accommodate all the things. Thank you. And Dr. Basanta, do you want to add anything?
No, excellent explanation. We are planning to use this mobile application, creating landslide susceptibility in higher resolution, incorporating all these exposure elements to the manageable resolution. And then the system is open to adopt or incorporate all the new technologies that being evolved now and that will evolve. So this is the open. So if you have other ICT, technology evolved or the people they have been using in different part of Nepal, we can incorporate that. So this is the open system. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you both. Dr. Padrones, I don't know if you want to mention how you incorporate kind of managing the evolution of different things into your models and systems.
Hi, Milli. Sorry about that. So yeah, we are doing actually a lot. We did some meteorological analysis also because we need something related to that in order to eventually generate the rainfall landslide threshold. And of course, currently, most of the data are coming into the website. And I think right now we are moving into the streamlining of the early warning system, all of those in the website. We are currently not looking into the development of application. But yeah, so we are still developing on the early warning system. But the one that I've shown is the one that we are looking forward into developing also.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And thank you, Samuela, for the interesting question. Mirianna, I believe you have your hand raised. Just to mention, I don't believe our last speaker will be able to join us. So please all do feel free to start thinking of questions and posting those in the chat and raising your hand. Mirianna, over to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Milli. Yeah, just to add on to that in terms of that kind of innovative approaches and kind of how do you keep progressing. So within the LandSLIP project, the app that was developed by Amrita University did have a feedback option within it. So people who were using it could provide information to the developers of the app to improve the app as it went along. And also we did a lot of kind of local stakeholder workshops to include that human element into the design and the improvement of the app going forward. Within the LandSLIP project, I didn't also mention, we did do some specifically research into potential other ways of collecting more information and collecting more landside observation data. And so the research wasn't applied in kind of an operational sense, but it was exploring other options, including passive and active searching of the internet and social media, logging of landside observations and reports. Yeah, we did look into that in terms of potential options and we did think through how they potentially in the future could be integrated into that landslide early warning system within India. And within GSI for their National Landslide Forecasting Centre, they have considered having, they will be having a research and innovation work stream or team within their centre to continue to explore other options to integrate anything new digital technologies and approaches as they evolve. But the other thing is that the form that we developed, the paper-based and the online form, is still really, really effective. So whilst there are new digital technologies that could be potential ways of collecting more information or might be easier for some people, just to remember that there are multiple ways and sometimes kind of the simplest methods are still just as effective. So not to abandon those older kind of traditional methods as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mirianna. Are there any further questions from anyone in the audience for any of our speakers? Can't see any that aren't answered in the chat, but do feel free to raise your hand if you do have one. Niraj, yes, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Milli. I just have one question with regards to the early warning systems that have been set up. I just wanted to know about some of the presenters' experiences when it comes to early warning systems and how it is perceived by the community that is likely to be affected. I'm saying this from experience because there are many cases where we go to a remote location with a lot of technology at hand, and while we're there, they are not really able to grasp what we are trying to seek out of the technology. For example, using drones as surveying or geotechnical assessments, and the results that come out of those assessments, we are not really able to share those experiences properly, and that applies to the early warning systems as well in a lot of context, because if there is a false warning, then there is a lot of negativity, or there is a lot of downside when it comes to using those early warning systems. So I just wanted to know a couple of experiences or maybe some instances that some of our speakers had when it comes to using early warning systems in landslides, which is one of the most unpredictable hazards of all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Niraj. Are there any speakers who'd like to come forth? Yes, please, Dr. Santosh.
No, Niraj is quite interesting, and that's the real challenge while developing landslide early warning system. So we have piloted couple of early warning systems in Nepal, and one example I can take from our work from Balaucha, where we established a landslide early warning system back in 2018. And so in the night, actually, it was a heavy rainfall, and the landslide was occurred, and then people heard the siren. But the problem was, those people only heard the siren who do not hide the zinc roof. So that's why there's sometimes problem dissemination, the siren, and then the mobile applications in the nighttime. So another challenge is that people do have lots of risk acceptance in the hilly communities in Nepal for not knowing the landslide pattern and their mechanism and the relationship between landslide, geomorphology, and then the rainfall. So we tried some couple of awareness program and trainings for 1 or 2 days. And then after, I think the knowledge increased over 20 to 30%, and people were very happy to do that. But I'm pretty much sure that there are lots of challenges for false alarm. That's my experience. Thanks.
I think I want to add something on this as well. So while doing our anticipatory action project, so what we learned that is the community knowledge, history of landslide knowledge they have from the very past is very important while doing any kind of anticipatory action project, because the project where we did was, there was a landslide, huge landslide 3 years back. And the community people had the experiences of how that happened, how that evolved. So they, during that time, there was a 10 days continuous rainfall. So, and there was cracks coming up. So they have experienced this in the past years as well. So that knowledge, historical knowledge, was very much important while doing our anticipatory action project in Nepal. So what they did was, while we were anticipating the landslide, there was rainfall, continuous rainfall for 6 to 7 days. So the community themselves anticipated that there is going to be a landslide, because in the historical period, in the same month of the year, the landslide occurred, and there was a similar pattern of rain. So these kind of historical knowledge from the community is also important while going, while doing those activity in the field. So yes, and while like Neeraj sir said that using the drone, so while using these tools as well, we have to take the community along with us. So what we are doing, actually take them and they have to be the part of the process and to learn how this process that occurs. While we were doing the household surveys as well, we took the community, local representatives along with us, so that they know what we are doing and what the results would be. So yeah, that was our experience.
Thank you very much, Bibek. And I think actually your answer responds slightly to Samuela's other question in the chat. Would you like to come off mute and ask that question, Samuela? Otherwise, I can do that. So the question was just around the approach and experience involving universities, experts, developers, and users in early warning systems and app development. Hi,
so,
yeah, go ahead.
So the question was basically, in Afghanistan, we don't have a government, or we don't have an ecosystem. So whoever that dabs into the early warning system or the development of it has to start and pretty much do everything from the scratch. So that's why I asked, like, sometime it may look very basic, but we would love to know how we organize and mobilize existing community resources, including universities' capacity to assist in the development of systems and research, and also how do you include experts not just from within Afghanistan and outside the country, and how you guys build on existing systems so that what you produce is brings more value, because it's easy to get stuck in the very basics and never like incorporate what's already there. But in Afghanistan, you can think of it as like there is nothing. And there are a lot of international organizations that produce tons of data that is not put to really integrated use. So our approach is to create not just a tool, but an asset, not just for the people who are affected by crisis, but also for international NGOs and aid agencies, so that they could also use it, so that that generates continuous value. So again, My question basically was, how did you approach by integrating all those universities, experts, developers? What was the experience and approach? How did you make them speak the same language? Because it's usually hard. Yeah.
Really great question. Thank you. And I think that's partly what FOREWARN is trying to achieve as well. Is there any of the speakers who would like to respond to that? I think possibly I will go to Ed Parkinson, who's the risk analysis advisor here at Start Network first. But I did just see a hand go up in the chat. So if you put your hand up again, I'll come to you second. Ed, over to you. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, Milli. Yeah, I think this is, as Milli said, a lot about what we think about at START in the Crisis Anticipation Risk Financing team and FOREWARN. How do we broker that relationship between humanitarians and academics and experts, and how do we turn that early warning into early action? So I think our answer to that is, linking it to appropriate financing mechanisms and making it flexible, but also what we need to around awareness raising, capacity building, advocacy. And there's a series of work streams across that, but in particular, the FOREWARN one is around creating that space like we have right now for this conversation, brokering those relationships and really trying to kind of come together and coordinate around like what are the barriers to that. So I'd encourage anyone who wants to do more of that with Start Network, particularly if you're part of a hub or Start Network member, to reach out to the Start team to discuss some of the resources that we have available and access to the learning and history of how we've done this type of thing before. But I'll hand over to Dr. Basanta, who has his hand up.
No, thanks, Ed. Quite nicely explained. So in Nepal, we had been involving communities, government officials and universities from the beginning of the project. So in co-design, co-develop, and co-delivery. So all the people working together. For example, I'm working in the university, so I involve my students to do the project. So when they go to the community, and then these communities believe that, oh, these people are from university and they are doing actual research. So that's where the trust building process is started on in the beginning, and then you can really increase the person and the networking. And then when we gather data, we can store in our university system. So we're always trying to make program from the project, not only the project. So it should be sustainable. And until and unless the communities do not take in their own capacity, the program will not be successful. That's why the university generates the knowledge in our case, and we apply to the communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Basanta. And I think actually that's quite a good opportunity for me to mention again that we are relaunching the FOREWARN expert groups specifically for landslides and flooding, but also through the year, this year, we'll be launching those for other hazards as well. So I don't know, maybe someone from the team can just post the extra information in the application form for those groups as well. Thanks, Jared. And yeah, if you're interested in getting involved, then please do feel free to read through some of that information and to apply. Unless there are any other burning questions from the floor, I can't see any hands up, so I might just move on to closing as we're coming up to time. So I just want to say thank you, of course, to all of our fantastic speakers today. We've heard about how forecasting tools for landslides can be developed using historic and vulnerability information in Nepal, and also how those can be used to mitigate the impact on communities. So thank you to presenters from Plan and Cordaid in Nepal for that. We've also heard an example from India and how to increase lead time with those kind of forecasts and how to share this information so it can be used for decision making. So thank you to Mirianna and Joe for that. Of course, we heard from Michele and colleagues on the work of the LandAware working groups, including the cataloguing work and also the IoT monitoring and warning work. And I think those links were shared throughout the chat as we went. And then finally, we heard from Dr. Padrones in the Philippines around the rainfall-based models for landslides and how this can be validated by citizen science. So thank you all, and thank you to everyone who raised such interesting and insightful questions as well. It was great to hear from you. As I say, we will share the presentation, the recording and the slides in due course. And please do feel free to reach out with any further questions that you might have. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Milli. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Milli. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. See you in the
Bye-bye.
next
Thank you.
FOREWARN global meeting.
Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.